On 90 deals in 90 days, U.S. President Donald Trump's tariff regime inciting a flurry of mixed reactions from trading partners. Washington's new wave of protectionist measures starting from as low as 10% to a steep 41% are set to take effect next week. Here in Southeast Asia, most reacted with relief after clinching last-minute deals. Malaysia, Thailand, Cambodia all at 19%, with Singapore remaining at the baseline 10%. The Minister of Trade and Industry says it will continue to monitor developments. Meanwhile, Malaysia says it's standing firm on a few red line issues and playing a huge role in moving towards a deal. Thailand and Cambodia praising these lowered levies, Bangkok calling it a good thing and a win-win approach at preserving the country's export base. Phnom Penh welcoming that news. The exporting hub initially threatened with a 49% tariff. Before that was slashed again to 36%. Other Asian allies like Japan, though, they are left hanging. Tokyo says the lowered 15% rate does not cover sectoral tariffs, including those on automobiles. The country has vowed to press on with its demands. South Korea is hailing yesterday's largest effort at securing a deal, but stressing that further discussions are still needed to finalize the terms. A chip powerhouse Taiwan calling the levies temporary while hinting at further reductions should an agreement be finally reached. Some backlash from within the European Union, with export-reliant nations calling the deal unfinished and a stark contrast to the initial zero-for-zero deal. The Swiss also looking to negotiate their way out of much steeper tariffs of 39%. While Canada's Prime Minister says he's disappointed by the Trump administration's decision to hike tariffs. But a deal could be on the table still for India as well as China. Despite being one of the first to start negotiations, levies on India remain unchanged. New Delhi vowing to protect the country's farm sector as levies triggered outrage from the opposition. China, meanwhile, doubling down on its stance on the U.S. tariff scheme. Both sides have been holding negotiations, the latest round taking place in Stockholm. Their talks ended with an agreement to extend the tariff deadline. For more insight on what all this could mean, we're joined by CNA's Afifah Ariffin from Kuala Lumpur, AP correspondent Jeremy Koh in Bangkok, and Jagruti Dave from Washington, D.C. Let's start with you, Afifah. Afifah, Malaysia squeaking in for that deadline to get that deal, but still few details at this point, which we will hear more about in the days to come.
Well, that's right. According to Malaysia's Trade Minister Tengku Zafrul Aziz, the talks to avert these steeper U.S. tariffs went right down to the wire. We know that on Thursday, Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim had that last-minute phone call with President Donald Trump, and that was a key milestone. But of course, we do know that the Malaysian negotiating team involving multiple ministries, agencies and industry players, they had continued discussions with the U.S. side late into the night, and by 5 a.m. this morning, a deal was finally reached. So Malaysia now has secured that tariff rate of 19%, like you said, down from the 25% that it had been threatened with in July. And this puts Malaysia on the same footing as some of its neighbours in the region. But industries like semiconductors and pharmaceuticals, though, will remain at zero tariffs for now, pending a U.S. review later this year. But in a nutshell, Mr. Zafrul said that Malaysia's final offer to Washington was a very comprehensive package covering 98% of tariff lines and streamlining non-tariff procedures. But the government held firm on its red lines, including no changes to excise duties on cars, on tobacco, on alcohol, no dilution to halal standards, and of course, no blanket exemptions on import licenses or foreign ownership caps. And Mr. Zafrul had described this outcome as a win-win that gives exporters more certainty while also keeping Malaysia on par with its ASEAN peers. So let's listen into what he said to the media at a press conference earlier today.
So overall, I think given the many things that we stood firm, we are quite happy that America understands our position, because we explained why. Because of where we are in the country's development, the sensitivities and all that. And we also said that we need to continue to be competitive. We want the rate to be fair in the region with our other ASEAN neighbours. So I think we are quite satisfied relatively speaking, where we are versus vis-a-vis our ASEAN partners.
So this new rate will take effect on August 8th. But like you said, Wei Su, not much details were revealed today. We are expecting a joint statement with more details from Malaysia and the US, which is expected to be issued this weekend.
Afifah, the minister there is saying he is relatively satisfied because this, relative to the rest of ASEAN, is not a high rate. But manufacturers in Malaysia would have more, I suppose, on-the-ground concerns, given how crucial manufacturing is to both the Malaysian economy, to its GDP, as well as its exports. How have they been reacting?
Well, the immediate reaction from industry players has been one of relief. So I was speaking to the Federation of Malaysian Manufacturers today, and they told me that this 19% rate finally puts Malaysia back on a level playing field with its regional peers like Thailand and Indonesia. For them, the parity matters because many buyers had been holding out over the past few months. They were unsure whether to continue their orders in Malaysia or whether to shift to neighboring countries. And so manufacturers are saying that this clarity will help supply chains resume, but they also stress that there is still this broader uncertainty that's not going away anytime soon. We know the global trade environment is still fragmented. The US-China trade war hasn't been resolved, and those geopolitical tensions will continue to shape investment decisions. But policy analysts, meanwhile, they view this outcome as a bit of a wake-up call for Malaysia. They argue that Malaysia needs to accelerate a lot of the structural reforms to move away from legacy, low-value sectors and move up to more advanced industries. And at the same time, Malaysia should also tap on into its existing trade agreements like RCEP, CPTPP, so that the next time there's a shock like this, the domestic economy is in a much stronger position to withstand it.
All right, thanks for that. Afifah there in Kuala Lumpur. And in Bangkok now, we have our AP correspondent, Jeremy Koh. Now, Jeremy, Thailand, like Malaysia, is squeaking in with that last-minute 11th hour deal. How did negotiators get to making that deal?
Well, Wei Su, the initial 36% tariff on Thai imports had put significant pressure on the Thai government. So the eventual 19% US-Thai tariff agreement is certainly a big relief. It's not ideal, but at least it's more in line with some of Thailand's neighbours. As Afifah said earlier, it's a level playing field. Like Cambodia, Malaysia and the Philippines are also subject to 19% duties, while Vietnam faces a slightly higher rate of 20%. Laos and Myanmar, on the other hand, are stuck at 40% tariff rate. So following the announcement today, the Thai cabinet held a special meeting to approve the tariff agreement. And subsequently, the US will publish the preliminary agreement between the two countries before bringing it to further negotiations for signing. So as what Afifah said earlier as well, for Malaysia, in Thailand, we don't have a lot of details about what's happening now. So what do we know right now? Well, Thailand has identified products for which it's ready to open the market to the US at a 0% import tariff. Now, these are products for which already Thailand already has free trade agreements with other countries, or items that Thailand cannot produce in sufficient quality for domestic use. But some products under the 0% tariff agreement with the US will not be implemented immediately. Thailand has requested a transition period of 3 to 5 years before reducing the tariffs to 0%. Also, in the case of pork, Thailand will open its market to US imports, but only in very limited quantities. Now, that's because US pork is produced at a much lower cost, so Thailand fears that allowing these cheaper imports will force many local pig farmers out of business. Also, US pork contains growth-enhancing chemicals which are banned in Thailand. But like I mentioned earlier, we'll certainly have to wait for more details. And some Thai companies have already said they're expecting concrete details to take months, if not years, to be worked out.
And of course, Jeremy, as we all know, the average time taken to make a trade deal is put at about 2.5 years. And this is, in fact, 90 days. Of course, Thailand, unlike Malaysia, is a treaty ally with the United States. And now it has got exactly the same tariff rate as Malaysia at 19%. Will this figure have any impact on ties, not just on the economy, but beyond that, between the US and Thailand?
Well, certainly it's a reprieve for the short term. Thailand's Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Pichai Chunhawajira has expressed gratitude following the announcement of reduced tariff rates. In a post on X, he described the 19% tariff rate as a reflection of the strong friendship and close partnership Thailand has with the United States. And he also said that the reduced rate would help maintain Thailand's global competitiveness, boost investor confidence, and create opportunities for economic growth and increased income. So all in, the reduced tariffs will surely be a reprieve for businesses here in Thailand. After all, exports account for 60% of Thailand's GDP, and the US received 1/5 of these. And analysts have said that the export growth here in Thailand in 2026 should turn positive, but in the second half of the year, exports could slow down. That's because in the first 5 months, Thailand's export growth rate has surged significantly. Now, part of this was due to the US importers accelerating their imports to avoid tariffs, as it's still unclear what the final tariff rate on Thai products would be. So in the second half of the year, US imports are likely to slow down because there's still stock in place. So in terms of opening market, the analyst said Thailand didn't lose much. But we have to wait for the details because we don't have a lot of details, as Afifah also mentioned in Malaysia. It's likewise here in Thailand.
All right, thanks for that, Jeremy. And to Washington, D.C. now with Jagruti Dave. We're hearing from Malaysia, Thailand, the concern for every country is how much they might lose in any kind of concessions or deal with Washington. Within the U.S. itself, there were concerns in April, for example, of costs going up, inflation, the U.S. dollar, the bond markets as well. Compared to expectations in April, where are we now compared to those expectations in April?
Well, I think the mood of the moment was uncertainty then, and the mood of the moment remains uncertain right now. You saw global markets falling by Friday morning, and you see US futures dropping by around 1%. So real uncertainty often among companies who are worried about what this means for them. And what you're seeing is companies already talking about how these tariffs are going to affect them. Apple, for example, which manufactures most of its products in countries like India, Vietnam and China, is saying that it could see its costs increase it could see $1.1 billion of costs added to its books in the next quarter. You've got Amazon, which had mixed revenues. Its revenues went up better than expectations, but its operational income went lower than expectations. And so it can't shake off the uncertainties for its future caused by these tariffs. And so experts are saying that many companies out there are still very unclear as to how these tariffs are specifically going to affect them. So I think that mood of uncertainty that was created in April is continuing.
All right, I think uncertainty is certainly the word of the day, of the week, of the year. If countries were hoping that on this deadline day, they might get certainty, even if it was unpleasant certainty, they're left in fact facing even more uncertainty, given that every deal could change with a post on Mr. Trump's social media site. A lot of things are still unnegotiated. What happens with transshipment deals, for example? What happens with sectoral levies? If you could very quickly sum up for us, what are the loose ends still left to be tied?
Yeah, there are several loose ends. What we do know, really, is that some of these tariffs are extraordinarily high. You've got 39% slapped on Switzerland. You've got 40% on Myanmar. But as you say, there is so much that is still left. The devil is in the detail of a lot of these tariffs, and those details are still unclear. Exactly how the implementation of levies on Japan's auto industry is going to be implemented and what impact they're going to have. It's leaving a lot of car makers really uncertain for their future. How exactly transshipments are going to be targeted, whether it's products in their entirety, whether it's products whose parts are made outside of certain countries, whether that is going to be how that is going to be implemented is still incredibly unclear. And what all this means for the US's negotiations with China. A lot of the transshipment tariffs, for example, are very much seen as trying to box China in and prevent it from circumventing any tariffs that have been imposed bilaterally with the United States. So what impact that is going to have and how China is going to view this transshipment tariffs is also an uncertainty in the ongoing negotiations. What we are seeing is in the deal with India, for example, the tariffs of 25%. But New Delhi is saying that new deals still could be thrashed out when US negotiators head to India towards the end of the month. So experts are saying that this is not the end. This August 1st deadline does not spell the end of this tariff saga. There is more still to come. And Donald Trump, as we've talked about, the implementation is not going to be in effect until a week's time. And a week is a long time in politics, as we've seen.
A week is a very long time in Trump-ode as well. Jagruti Dave, Washington, D.C., AP's Jeremy Koh in Bangkok, and CNA's Afifah Ariffin for us in Kuala Lumpur.